On today's episode of Locked On 76ers, a must-win for Philadelphia tonight as they host Boston following the tough loss on Sunday to Milwaukee. Does Keith agree? Do you agree? Well, we'll dive into it next to start things off right here, Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by, of course, here, hanging out with us. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome. You are Locked On 76ers. I'm Devon Givens from 97.5 The Fanatic Radio in Philadelphia alongside my co-host Keith Pompey, Sixers beat writer for TheInquirer.com. What's happening, Keith?
What's popping, man? What's popping?
Big game tonight in South Philadelphia, man. That's what's popping, and that's what we're going to get into. But before we do, we got to thank everybody for hanging out with us and for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On 76ers is free and available on all platforms, including right here on YouTube at Locked On 76ers. And Keith, huge game tonight as the Philadelphia 76ers at 51-27 host the 54-24 Boston Celtics. And we have to get into the keys to the game. We'll do that later on in the show. We'll also talk about James Harden and what he needs to do to get back on track in order for this team to defeat Boston tonight. And looking forward to the postseason. That week off will be very helpful for, I'm guessing, James Harden and the rest of the guys as they recoup a little there. And we'll keep an eye on what Cleveland does as well as they are in Orlando on Tuesday night, the magic number being one. But first, Keith, I don't know, man. I got to start off with how I felt the last time these two teams faced off on that Saturday night in Philadelphia. Down 0-2 to the Boston Celtics, Keith. I looked at that one going into game 3 where we know they lost. I believe the final score was 117-114. Jason Tatum hitting a three-pointer with just under 2 seconds left on the game clock. Timeout Boston. They inbound the ball, throw it to him on the move. DeAnthony Melton playing him close but creating enough space. Tatum did on the step back. Goes for the three, the dagger to win the game even though the score was tied. Drills it. After having Tobias Harris play a very good defensive game on him, they decided to switch him off and put DeAnthony Melton. Can't argue the fact that he's a very good defender, arguably their best perimeter defender. But on that night, I thought that that was a defensive mistake down the stretch for what took place. But I also said before that game, Keith, and I know we talked about it on the podcast. I did the show before the game on our broadcasting partner there with the Sixers, 97.5 The Fanatic. And I talk about how that was a must-win game to not only defeat the Celtics to let the Celtics know, but also for the Sixers to have that mental thing where they know we can beat this basketball team. They've lost 3 different ways. The buzzer beater there. Oh, by the way, Joel Embiid hit a three-pointer from 70 feet. That didn't count because he didn't get it off in enough time. The game before that, 4 starters not playing in the game, including Jaylen Brown, who left the game early. You had 9 three-pointers made between Blake Griffin and Grant Williams, who started in their place. Derek White played a big game. Jason Tatum had a poor shooting night, yet the Celtics again defeated the Sixers in game 2. Game 1 was the opener for the season. They beat the Sixers pretty handily in that one. So they've beaten them in a variety of different ways. But now here we are with the Boston Celtics right now as we look at the season and having the record that they do currently have. And they are at, again, 54-24 with the Sixers at 51-27. They have a 3-game lead on the Sixers. Right now with 4 games left, they're not catching the Boston Celtics. Now it's about the mental part of knowing if we get past our first-round matchup, right now it looks to be the Brooklyn Nets. Can we beat the Boston Celtics and how? Well, this is not going to break any tie. This is not going to do anything like that. But just like we talked about in our last episode, Keith, where is your mettle? How do you bounce back after a tough defeat? And in this case, after losing to Milwaukee, losing 3 times to Boston in these different ways. How do you respond to the Milwaukee situation and also sending a message to Boston going into this game? Keith, I believe this one tonight is still a must-win game for the Sixers.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was like one of them games where someone sat out, like
Boston or for the Sixers?
For the Sixers, like
okay.
a rest day, one of those. I don't know. I feel like the thing is for the Sixers, yeah, if everyone's healthy and everyone plays for a mental edge or for like we talked about it, seeing is your time to step up and prove that you can bounce back like Boston did, like Milwaukee did, that you're in that level. It's a huge game from that aspect. If everybody plays. Now, if everybody doesn't play, then it's one of those things like, hey, well, we didn't have our full team, right? But, you could use that excuse. But I'm with you 100%. And I typically don't get into these type of games because I feel like, in the past I did, but I felt like, it's so close to the playoffs and that people become vanilla and everything like that. But I feel like from a team standpoint, invincibility, the Sixers want to feel invincible, this is a must-win game. When we look at it, you lost to Boston, you lost to Toronto. No, excuse me, you lost to Boston, you lost to Miami, those 2 back-to-back home games. Then you go on the road and then you beat Miami. Then you lose to Dallas. But then after that, you start beating everyone else. And then all of a sudden, you start losing these games again to these quality opponents. And I feel like right now, it's kind of like you got to stop the bleeding, so to speak, a little bit. And then not only that, you got to legitimize those wins that you did have. Because when we say, okay, you beat Minnesota, Timberwolves, okay, you beat these other teams, but then you went into Golden State and lost. You went to Denver and lost. You went here. And you can always say, but we didn't have James. We didn't have Joel, But now you're playing with these dudes and you got spanked by Milwaukee and now you're going to play Boston. So I don't know. I'm from what you saying is I think to legitimize what they're doing and for them to get that little mojo back, I think they do have to win this game.
Yeah, and look, I don't know what the approach will be from Boston's side of things. Maybe they want to come out here and defeat them again and say, hey, we could sit guys too. Keith, to your point, because the Sixers can't catch us, they can't catch us, and we already have done enough this season. We're in their head. They can't do it. And if we beat them again without, to your point, resting, no Tatum, no Brown, no Smart, no Horford, something along those lines, then that's just another way for the Sixers to look at things. And they can say what they want. But look, man, when you lose 4 times to one team in the regular season and they do it in different ways, you can't help but think about it. What did we do wrong? Why can't we get over the hump? And to your point, Keith, in the Joel Embiid era, as much as we give them the credit for being in the playoffs, they have yet to figure out the Celtics in the postseason. That's been hanging over his head. Tobias Harris has been here for one of those. Shake Milton also being here for one of those for a kind of Korkmaz, even though they're not playing as much. They've been here. And that's something that they have to get over. And I think, again, tonight, it's a must-win situation for this basketball team. So I'm glad you agree with me in that sense. I'm very curious, though, about the resting. Does somebody sit out tonight against this Boston team? It better not be Embiid because now they're trying to give Giannis the MVP after Nikola Jokic has sat for 3 games, and Embiid has done nothing but still play well in his role with this basketball team. We'll get into James Harden next and what he needs to do in this game tonight to get things going against the Boston Celtics for the Philadelphia 76ers, because they are absolutely going to need him. Well, if you want to be in here with a game like this one tonight, Keith will be there. I will be there. Have you ever been stressed out about buying tickets where you go to a specific site and you think you have a certain price point in there and that one looks great for you, or you're trying to get multiple tickets, but you can't really afford it and you're just not loving them? Or if you're trying to find them last minute because hey, you want to take your son, or you want to take another loved one, and you're trying to get there finding the best price. Well, buying tickets to your favorite events, they shouldn't be stressful. When killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll simply have. Now, flash deals, last-minute tickets, these are some of the things that you can experience on the Game Time app right there. All right. Easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, whether it be some shows, some comedy shows, some concerts with music, or in this case, as we talk about, how about a sporting event in Philadelphia? Images of seat views, you'll get those, lowest price guaranteed, and you'll get event cancellation protection, job loss protection, etc. Well, forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the date of the event. Get images of your seat once again before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy those tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're all set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through the email. Here's what you do. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back. You are Locked On 76ers. That is Keith Pompey. I am Devon Givens here with you. We appreciate it as always. Hanging out with us for your next listen. Check out the Locked On Now podcast. Nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Keith, James Harden has struggled since returning a bit from his Achilles, where he's nursing that. Bad timing, of course, for the Sixers as they head into the playoffs, but he has some time off. He's going to have a full week off before the playoffs get underway after their last game on Sunday in Brooklyn, where things may be wrapped up by then and he may not play in that game anyway. But Keith, in a game like tonight, if he is playing, you're going to need better production than what we saw the last time out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically what we saw like over the last recent games, stretch of games, do you know he's only had one solid half in these games? And I'm talking about the first half against the Toronto Raptors. I mean, the second half, he shot 2 for 5. The first half, he was like 7 for 9. Then he shot like 2 for 5. But, he just been struggling shooting the ball, since he's been back. He, like the first quarter, of the last game, he didn't have a shot. And then he disappeared in the fourth quarter. Like, he was just missing in action. So I feel like in order for the 76ers to be successful, like I get this rhetoric, like a lot of people think that is a democracy. And Doc Rivers is right. There's no democracy. In order for the 76ers to be successful, it has to be Joel Embiid and James Harden. And that doesn't mean that James has to drop 30 or do whatever, but he has to play at a high level in regards to distributing the rock, knocking down the shots that become available, doing all those other things. And I feel like in order for them to beat Boston, he has to be that guy. He has to. He can't play the way he did against Drew Holiday and got abused and got exposed. He can't do that. He has to come out and he has to be the man, because I'm serious. As good as we think is great when they do move the ball and everything is great, but at the end of the day, James Harden and Joel have to have a huge imprint on what the Sixers are doing for them to be successful. And he has to do it tonight.
Need him tonight, especially going against a defender like Marcus Smart in that starting lineup, matching what they're bringing off the bench. You'll get what we're going to get from DeAnthony Melton and Tyrese Maxey. But also in the backcourt, man, you're going to need something from James Harden. As you pointed out, it doesn't have to be 30, but it can be the 18 with the double-digit assists. And most importantly, protecting the basketball, okay? Because you're going to need to value the basketball to have those possessions that are valuable possessions for this basketball team going against a defense like the Boston Celtics. We talked about how deep the Milwaukee Bucks are. Boston continues to do the same with Malcolm Brogdon and Derek White coming off the bench and helping out the way that they have. So we'll see how things go with this one tonight. But James Harden has to be better in this game tonight against the Celtics. More keys to the game. Our final segment here coming up as we tap into this game tonight. What are the keys to this one? What are some of the matchups that we're looking forward to seeing? We'll tap into those in our final segment right here on Locked On 76ers. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. And with BetterHelp, have you ever been, as we get into the spring and we're starting to go to the summer, but you've been having some trouble where you feel like you just need to talk to someone. You can't talk to maybe your significant other, your best friend, anyone in your family that you just don't want to share certain information with, and you need some help. You need better help. And what was going on? Well, I know I was like that just a few years ago. I would say about 3-4 years ago, some personal stuff happening in my life that was very effective, really affecting things of how I was moving about my daily doings. And with that, I needed to speak to someone, and it changed a lot of things of how I approach things. And it was very helpful. So when we talk about BetterHelp, getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing and changing. Things are evolving all the time. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding, because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way we do until we talk through some things and see if we can figure it out that way. BetterHelp connects you with licensed therapists who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from simply wherever you are. If you've benefited from therapy, if you feel like you can benefit from therapy, this is for you. And please take my word, it helped me out when I needed it the most. And that's exactly what I needed at the time. Some help from some friends and family, but also speaking to an outside person to help give me a different voice, unbiased, of course, and not knowing who I was, just simply looking at the situation and trying to figure things out to make sure things were better for me going forward. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. All right, welcome back here. Keith Pompey, Devon Givens here with you on Locked On 76ers, Sixers, and Celtics tonight in South Philadelphia at the Center. Huge game, big matchup between two of the top 3 teams in the East and the top 2 teams in the Atlantic Division. And Keith, for this one, man, outside of the James Harden part that we talked about in our last segment, what are some of the key matchups that you're looking forward to tonight? Because there are quite a few.
Oh, yeah, a lot of them. I mean, you know what? I'm looking forward to seeing Embiid and going up against those bigs that they have, right? Also, I don't really know if it's a person per se, but yeah, you know what? It is a person. I want to see the coaching matchup. I need to pay attention to that. I want to see if the 76ers are going to finally make some adjustments when the Boston Celtics bigs go out in the perimeter and face up. Because if you notice, regardless of who played in that game, who played in those games, they were raining wide open threes against the Sixers. And to me, it comes down to like, hey, you see the guy out there, go out there and defend. Don't give him the wide open shot. So to me, that's like a major thing, major. Also, if there's one last thing, and I need to see I need to see what Jalen McDaniels is going to do against Jason Tatum, because last game they had D'Anthony Melton on him and he just shot over him for that last shot. So I want to see what Jalen McDaniels can do against him, because I think that's a tough guard because of the height disadvantage for D'Anthony.
For me, that's a great one. I thought Tobias Harris did a really good job in that game. Mm-hmm. And that's why I was a little disappointed that they switched off on that final possession, that final shot, where Jason Tatum shot over DeAnthony Melton. So that's going to be one to watch with Tobias Harris and Jalen McDaniels, to your point on Jason Tatum. Tatum has struggled too, Keith, the last 2 games. So let's see if he goes off a bit in this one. The one for me, because of the way the bench guards, specifically White and Brogdon, I know White has started, but also Brogdon coming off the bench, how will Maxey and Melton specifically, even though Maxey's a starter, at some point they're going to be on the floor together where he's with a certain group with the bench lineup. How are Maxey and Melton going to maybe match points with those two? Because Brogdon has had a big game or two, and so has Derek White in their roles off the bench for Joe Mazzulla's team. That's going to be important. We need to see what they do against those guards coming off, because they've had impacts in every game. And back at home, role players play better. Well, George Niang hit shots in this game where he didn't have an opportunity against Milwaukee. We've seen him do it in Milwaukee before, and the same with Jalen McDaniels, as you just talked about it, but not so much in this last game. Will they play better at home? Very curious to see that. And then the other part, Keith, I know that they have had Robert Williams coming off the bench a little bit. Paul Reed against Robert Williams. These are 2 leapers, and I would give the edge in terms of jumping that way to Robert Williams than Paul Reed. But Paul Reed's a hustler. He gets after it. He gets dirty. He will do all the necessary things to win. What's that matchup looking like if the primary minutes are Reed going against Robert Williams? Much different than some of these other players that he's had to go against. Yeah. So those are mine.
They're all good ones. Yeah, I like
those. Would be mine. So,
yeah, I like them.
This is going to be a fun one tonight, man. I can't wait to see it. Hope everybody enjoys it. And maybe we're talking about a win, finally beating the Celtics, which will mean more probably to the Sixers than it will for the Boston Celtics. But with that said, we thank everybody for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. On our next episode, we'll recap the game, of course, and look ahead to a few other things. Now, make your second listen Locked On NBA. We're Locked On experts are covering the biggest stories around the league every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. All right, Keith, you can let the good folks know where they can find us.
Like Dee said, free and available wherever you get your podcast, But also tonight, Dee's going to be on the Divine Giving Show from 6 p.m. to midnight, because it's correct. And it's going to be also live at the arena.
Yes.
So
always love those.
So yeah, it's gonna be fire. Divine Giving Show from 6 to midnight, live at the arena. You can also follow D at DivineG975 on Twitter. So make sure you give my man a follow. But you can also follow me on Twitter at Pompey on Sixers, and you can read my stuff in the Philadelphia Inquirer, inquirer.com.
UConn, Keith, last night in the final championship game for college basketball, took down San Diego State. Not a surprise for me. How about you?
Nah, it wasn't. It wasn't at all. Like, I watched a little bit of the first half. San Diego State looked good in the beginning, and then all of a sudden they couldn't hit a shot. And I'm like, oh, timeout, bro. Call timeout. I didn't know timeout's coming. But it is.
Yeah, it caught up to him.
Yeah.
Definitely caught up to him. Well, I mean, that's how it goes. That's what the tournament is all about. Championship game. Works out that way. But thanks, Keith. Thanks to everybody out there for listening and watching. We always appreciate it. And we will be back with you tomorrow, recapping the game against the Celtics. Talk to you later.
Peace.